What's good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I'm going to break down some very important information about what's going on in the markets, what you should be watching for going forward. I'm going to talk about SPY, Tesla, the QQQ, Nvda, Apple, and many other tickers. I'm going to talk about what news is coming out that will affect the markets and what you should be looking at from a technical standpoint. Before I break anything down about all this information, let me just mention a couple of things real quick. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also don't forget about the Moomoo link. The offer ends very soon. Deposit $100 and you're guaranteed 5 free stocks with a $100 cash reward. The offer also ends in just 6 days at the time I'm recording this, so check it out before they run out. So guys, I'm recording this video on Saturday night because I'm not going to be available for Sunday, so I do apologize if any news comes out that I miss, but for now I'm just going to break down what the charts are telling us and what the news is telling us as of Saturday night. Now, when it comes to the market, some very interesting stuff is going on. We have some earnings coming out. We have Carnival reporting earnings for Monday. For Tuesday, we have Jefferies, Manchester United, and just a couple of other tickers. Then for Wednesday, we have BlackBerry and a few others, nothing too big. And then the only really big one that's coming out in my eyes would be like Nike for Thursday. And other than that, everything else is just relatively small, nothing too significant compared to like Apple or anything like that. And then for the data that's coming out, there's not much going on for Monday. We have some like Fed manufacturing data, which is not too major, nothing too significant. For Tuesday, we have more data involving housing prices, home sales, and etc., but nothing too big either. But for Wednesday, things change a lot because we have Jerome Powell speaking. And this is going to be very significant because Powell is going to be speaking during the market open on Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, and what he says will affect the markets big time. Now, as of recent, Powell has been a lot more hawkish, so this could cause a lot more movements, so we have to be very careful here. And the thing about this is going forward with it, I wanted to just mention that Powell also is going to be giving a speech at the very end of the day on Wednesday for me, but that's going to be like very early in the morning on the East Coast for people in New York or other places for Thursday morning. So we have another Powell speech coming out later on. We have two speeches basically by Powell for the week. The first one's going to cause more volatility for Wednesday after the market opens, and then the second one is going to cause more volatility for Thursday. Then on top of that, for Thursday, we have GDP numbers, initial jobless claims. Then Friday has like PCE data with a couple of other things. We also have Michigan consumer reports coming out and the inflationary expectations, which is important. So lots of data is coming out maybe during the later days of the week. The beginning is going to likely start off kind of like slow, and it's going to be very interesting with Powell speaking 2 times, so please be prepared for that. Now, some news came out involving like Meta pulling news from Facebook and Instagram in Canada. This came out. This is going to be interesting to see what reactions we get. Google is going to be launching its perspectives search feed very soon. That's going to be interesting too. So far, Google's holding up nicely as a result of this. And Coinbase saw a small pump or a decent sized pump after the Supreme Court of the US favored Coinbase in an arbitration dispute. So that was some good news as well. But now let's talk about the tickers, what's going on with the charts. So I just want to warn you guys, we have a very important test coming out. I recorded this entire video not too long ago, and then the video just got deleted, so that was unfortunate. But I'm going to just quickly go through this. For SPY, basically, we have a 4-hour time frame right here, and it's looking a little bit more bearish. It's continuing to slow down, but we have a very critical test likely coming. So as SPY is continuing to downtrend, what you want to do is zoom out of the charts and notice something. We have market structures that keep on developing. As you could tell, there are instances where we like pump. We have like these moves to the downside before we continue pumping. And the question is, are we about to see a market structure like that? Is this just a small retracement, or is this going to be a confirmation of a downtrend? And in order to get that confirmation, I would have to watch support. So far it is downtrending, but are we going to get like a big bounce and then start pushing up higher later on? That's going to depend on earnings and other factors, but there's going to be another factor in, and that's going to be the technical analysis side of that. So what this means is the 4 hours bearish, we're downtrending, right? We're going to be watching 430. If we break below 430 in a strong manner, this thing is likely going to come all the way down to fill the gaps around the very low 420s, and we could see this thing sink even lower than that. But it's going to likely come all the way down to 420. If 430 breaks, that's going to be the next major support. If this thing manages to bounce off 430, it has potential to try to push up even higher. So we're going to be watching these levels very carefully for the week, especially because Jerome Powell is going to be speaking. If you think the market is going to try to bounce from here, watch resistance at 433, 434, the entire zone, 435, 436.25, and then 436.64, 438, and then potentially 440. If it continues to drop, watch support at 432, 430 is going to be a very, very important one, the most important one. Then we have the 429s and like much lower levels after that if it continues to sink. Your bearish confirmation, big, big, big victory for the bears is going to come if we break below 430. So watch that carefully for the week. We are looking more bearish right now. We're going to be looking for a potential bounce by the time we open up, maybe a back test of like 434 or so before it continues to sink. And it's still looking more bearish. The market could continue to downtrend from here. It's still looking more bearish. There's no confirmation of us trying to bounce yet. And let me just add that on the daily chart here, we have a potential crossover coming on the PPO. So the odds do favor a potential 430 test. And if that breaks, there's going to likely be more downside to come. So I just want to warn you guys about this. There's also a gap all the way down to like 420 without the extended hours, just on the daily charts. Just very close to where the 50 is right now. So watch this all very carefully. It is looking more bearish than bullish, if anything, and the odds favor downside. As for Tesla, let me just fix one thing right here. Looking at the 4-hour time frame on Tesla, this thing has a potential head and shoulders. Now, it failed to break above 265. If it wants to turn bullish, it needs to break 265, then start pushing to 270 plus, and then fill this imbalance at 275. Tesla has deliveries in early July, so it could always get a bounce later on. But for now, the daily is looking a little bit more bearish. It's about to get this like crossover on the PPO. And on the 4-hour time frame, there's this head and shoulders structure that is still developing. The neckline is going to be around 247. It looks to me like it's going to retest that area. First, we need confirmation, which is going to be a break below the 50, which I think it's going to do. And we're going to see if this thing breaks below 247. I think the odds favor that. So a break below that is going to take this thing down to about 235 now. And for the people wondering, like, what's happening with my analysis? Why do I change quite often? Well, technicals oftentimes shift and we get different confirmations depending on news and depending on so many things. And the market is very volatile compared to like what it was like, like a couple of years ago where it was much easier to swing trade. It's very difficult to swing trade in a market like this a lot of the time. Not always, but just during many stages and cycles. And for now, it's looking more like Tesla likely has potential to see some more downside. If it breaks this 247 support, it's going to come all the way down to 235 in my opinion. And it is looking weak with the head and shoulders. It's still valid now. It failed to invalidate it. It tried to do so, but it failed to do so. And now we're just going to watch it and see how support holds. To turn bullish, it has to break and hold above 265. And I think the odds don't favor that. The odds favor downside, unfortunately. Now, for GME, it's looking more bearish. It's continuing to downtrend. If you look at the 4-hour MACD, you're going to be watching support at like 22 flat and 20 after that. And for now, we have these imbalances down here that could be tested. So watch those all very carefully. It is still looking more bearish. It's very important to note. For AMD, if it wants to turn bullish, it has to get above the 200 EMA above 111. If it gets above that, it could get closer to 115. But for now, it's trying to get a bullish cross on the 4-hour. It might try to gap up a little bit and then try to continue. But the bigger trend on the daily, the much larger trend, is still looking weak. So there's no confirmation just yet. And this thing could come all the way down to this like 103 area. I could see that being the next major level. It's very possible it could come down to 103 next, but it needs to break below 107.5, and that's going to be your confirmation of the break to the downside. For now, it's still looking more bearish, but it may try to bounce a little bit first before it continues dropping. So please be very careful. Watch resistance at around, we have 111. If it gets all the way above that, that has some potential to push this thing higher. The next important zone is going to be closer to 115 if it gets above that. And we're going to be watching these levels very carefully. For Netflix, this thing is still trying to curl a bit, but when you look at the 4-hour time frame, the same thing is happening. It is trying to get a push up thanks to the bullish divergence. That's going to depend on the news. If it breaks above and holds the 50, it has potential to push up to 430 to 433 and even like 437, but it has to hold above the 50 EMA, and it failed to do so far. If it rejects off this, you're going to be watching 420, 417, 415, followed by like 414, and also like 409. There is that, like, I think there's either an imbalance or a gap down at around, I saw it somewhere down here, like around 4, I think it was like 405 around there. There was an imbalance I saw. I think it's going to likely come down there if it does reject off this 50 EMA. But if it breaks above it and holds it, it has the potential to bounce. So we're going to be watching this carefully. I think the market's slowing, the entire market slowing down could affect many of these tickers like Netflix. So we're going to watch those carefully. The QQQ is looking more bearish on the 4-hour time frame, so watch the 50 EMA as support. But on the 1 hour time frame, watch the 200 EMA as the next major support zone too, alongside 360. So watch 361 and then 360 as support. If they fail us, this thing has more downside to go, and it's going to come all the way down to the gap at like the mid 350s. If this thing tries to bounce, you're going to be watching resistance at 363. If it holds above that, it could make its way closer to like 366. But we're going to be very patient for the time being. We have to do what we have to do. So just watch for confirmation, watch the 50 EMA as resistance, watch 363, 366, and potentially more levels. But this is looking weaker on the 4 hour. The odds do favor downside for the QQQ. But for confirmation, watch it break below 360. I think the odds favor at 360 test, and we'll see what happens from there. It is still looking more bearish to me. The Nasdaq also has a potential head and shoulders that is developing right about here. I think it's easier to see on the 1 hour time frame. So just like this, you could see there's a potential head and shoulders developing, and we have this unfilled gap all the way down here in the very low 13,200s. On the 4 hour time frame, you could see that as well. 13,200, another unfilled gap happens to be around there. And on the 4 hour time frame, we have this bearish cross on the PPO. So I'm going to be looking for a small balance followed by more downside and a downtrend to the lower 13,000s. I think the odds favor that. Same thing with SPX. There's that gap. Actually, first we have to test the 50 EMA and 4,300. If those break, if 4,300 breaks on SPX, it's going to come down to the gap I was just about to mention, down to the lower. I think there's one in the 4,200s, so 4,222, like around there. And there's another one all the way down to 4,100s. If that ends up breaking, if it breaks below 4,200, it's going to fill the next one. I'm leaning in the direction that it may fill this gap. For confirmation, watch it break below 4,300, just like SPY. The VIX has a bullish divergence developing, but there's not enough confirmation that's breaking out just yet. This is going to happen because of implied volatility going up for the S&P 500, and this could happen with a potential break to the upside and a confirmation of a trend change. With the bullish divergence here, there's a chance the VIX may make its way up to about 15 again, but there's no guarantee. We need confirmation of this thing breaking and holding above 13.5 and continuing to push to the upside for that to happen. We're still waiting for that. The SQQQ is also looking a little bit more bullish. We have this potential inverse head and shoulder structure. If it gets above the 50 EMA on the 4 hour time frame, this could turn bullish and make its way all the way up to about this gap. It's about 22 or almost there. If we get that, that's going to be bullish. If not, be careful. Now, why is this going to pump? It's because the QQQ and the Nasdaq are slowing down. If this gets above the 50 EMA, that's going to be another signal that the market is slowing down. So that's going to be that this could be used as a signal for what's about to go down. On the dollar index, there's a possible inverse head and shoulders structure with the bullish divergence developing. And if it comes down for a backtest at 102.69, we're going to be watching if it bounces off here. So it may drop a little bit, meaning the market may pump just a tiny bit. But then if it bounces and breaks above the 200, if it gets above like 103, this thing could start pumping quite nicely and make its way up to like 104 plus and beyond. So if this inverse head and shoulders plays out, once again, this could turn bullish. That would be bearish for the stock market. The odds are favoring that a bit. For Coinbase, I'm very mixed on this right now. It is looking in the middle, a little bit more bullish from a technical standpoint, but I'm a little bit concerned because of the market. The market is continuing to slow down. So if the market does slow down a lot, this may drag Coinbase down. So watch 60 as supportive. 60 breaks is going to likely come all the way down to 57.61 and potentially 56.59. If it tries to break above and hold 62, it's going to come up to about 64 in my opinion, which is where the next imbalance is. And then after that comes 66.34. Now it looks bullish. For now, the trend is favoring this thing making its way up to about 64, but it is a little bit risky right now because it pumped off some bullish news and also because of how the collective market is performing. So be careful with that and watch for confirmation if 62 breaks. For Aapl, we're going to be watching how this performs because it had technically a bearish divergence developing as it's continuing to pump, but the trend is still making higher highs and higher lows and holding above the 50 EMA. If it's bullish, there's a potential bullish structure technically that you could argue. Aapl is going to try to break and hold above the high it made, and if it breaks it could get closer to 190. If Aapl fails, it's going to come all the way down to 186.5, 186, 185. That's going to be an entire support zone. If that fails us, then 183.95, 182.5, then 180 could come. But for now, the trend is still remaining strong as long as it's above the 50 EMA. It's been above this for quite a while. There have been some instances where it like broke below it and just like pushed above the 4 hour 50 EMA. For now, we're going to be watching that as major support. If it breaks below this, this would be a bearish signal for the markets, and I do think it could get a retest of this. I'm going to be watching for that, 185 to 184 retest area, and we will see what happens going forward from there. If it breaks below, that could be a bearish signal. I think earnings is going to determine this in the next couple of weeks. And other than that, I'm just going to be unbiased and watch support and resistance. For Nvidia, this thing is looking like it's holding up for now, but it's getting very close to getting a 50 EMA test on the 4-hour time frame. If it breaks below the 50 at 417, if it breaks below that, it's going to likely see downside and come all the way down into the mid 400s. I think there's a gap below. I think I saw one somewhere. Let me just double check it for you guys. There was this gap right, I think it's right here. It's unfilled. There's one at 394. I think there was another one. I think I'm missing it, but it's okay. I think on the 1 hour it should be showing. But anyways, the thing about Nvidia is I like to look at gaps. There's one like right here in like the 390s. Could it come all the way down? It's a possibility with a possible like head and shoulder structure that's developing. You could argue that it has that. Just looking at it like this, it's kind of like slanted. I'd be very careful with this. On the 4 hour, it is looking a little bit more bearish overall. It is possible for this thing to start downtrending a little bit, but you're going to be watching for that confirmation from the level I was just discussing. So just watch how this thing performs moving forward, and let's actually bring back the extended hours. I think there was a pre-market gap. I saw it somewhere on this. I'm going to have to like double check and look for it. I saw somewhere there was like that pre-market gap. There was also this imbalance level that was looking like right around here, I believe, around the lower like 417 area. We could see this thing get closer to the imbalance, and if that fails, the next important level is going to be like 414, then potentially the 410s, then 405s. If it wants to turn bullish, it has to break above 425 and then 426.5, the entire zone. If it breaks above that, there's a gap above around this like 430 area. So like I said, it's very mixed on Nvidia. It is looking a little bit weaker to me on the 4-hour time frame. So the odds do favor it revisiting this like 417 area and potentially breaking down. It's more likely to do that, especially with the market slowing down. But watch for confirmation at the 50 EMA. Google's kind of stuck, and there's a possible inverse head and shoulders developing. So if it breaks above the 50 and starts pushing, we could see this thing get closer to like this 126 area. But we need confirmation of a break up, and it is looking more like that from a technical standpoint as it had some bullish news, but it's not a guarantee just yet because it could reject here and still stuck between support and resistance. If it rejects off the 50, you're going to be watching this 122 support followed by 120, then 119.3. And if 119, excuse me, 0.3 ends up breaking on Google, it's going to likely come down a lot more to like 115. So right now I'm in the middle, but if it breaks above the 50, then we could be seeing this like inverse head and shoulders like structure. It's a little bit slanted, play out, and this thing could push up a lot more. But first we have to get above the 50. I'm eyeing that right now for Google, but I'm going to be patient just to be safe. For Amazon, it's very much stuck right now. There's a possible flag that's developing, but we need confirmation. Now it is losing some momentum right now, and there's a bearish divergence on it. So it's like right here. Let me just zoom out and show you. Right here, there's a bearish divergence that developed on the RSI, so like right here. I'd be careful with it if it does get a rejection. For now, it's still uptrending. It's still holding above the 50. To turn bearish, it has to break below the 50. And overall, it's still looking pretty decent. Now, it's on this strong uptrend. I think it could get a backtest of the 50 first, looking at it slow down, but it could get a bounce after that. So I'm going to be watching that very carefully. It is losing some momentum, so the odds do favor that, but it's best to just be as patient as possible. For Meta, it's on a nice uptrend. It's continuing to uptrend over and over again. Not much is going on. If it breaks 290, it could remain more bullish because this is what Meta is basically doing. If you look at the daily and like zoom out, Meta had that giant gap that formed and is trying to make its way right back up. This is what Meta is trying to do. So you guys remember this gap that Meta formed when gap down? The gap would take this thing all the way up into like the 320s. It is trying to make its way up, and it's just continuing to remain very strong. Now, you could argue there's a potential bearish divergence that formed like right here, but no guarantee it's playing out just yet. I do believe the market may dictate it to some degree, causing it to slow down just a little bit. But overall, I mean, this thing is just continuing to remain strong on the 4-hour. It's still uptrending quite nicely. On one of these time frames, I noticed something. Let me just see if I can find it. I think it was right here, either this one, the 1 hour, could be the 2 hour possibly. So on the 2 hour, I'm noticing that it's consistently just bouncing off the 50 EMA. That happens to be around 280 right now. So if it does get a rejection off like 290 to start off initially, watch support at this 285 level, which was previous resistance at the pre-market. And then if it breaks down, Below that, watch 280, 281, 277, 276, followed by 275. I mean, this entire zone is still holding up nicely. If it breaks to the upside, watch 290 as resistance, and if it breaks above that, it could be on its way to get closer to about 300. It's still holding up nicely. Like I said, it's still looking quite strong. There's a bearish divergence, which tells me it may get a rejection, get a backtest of like 280 and be dictated by the markets. I think the odds favor that, maybe coming down just a little bit and trying to get a bounce. But for now, the overall trend is still strong on Meta. The bigger trend is still nice on it. It's not really showing major weakness. And we need confirmation of a break below the 50 for it to turn weak. So far, it has not done that. So with that said, I mean, the market's holding up quite nicely. I'm sorry, Meta is holding up quite nicely. The market is showing some weakness. Sorry about that, guys. The market is showing some weakness. So watch for that backtest to 430 on SPY and remain calm, cool, and collected. And I will see you guys very soon. All right, so thank you all for listening. Have a good one. I'll see you guys very, very soon in the next video by the pre-market. This video was recorded on Saturday, by the way, so I'm uploading this for Sunday in the daytime. And I will see you guys again on Monday during the pre-market. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, everyone. Market to the moon as the long term is still incredibly bright. And peace out.